Alina stood at the edge of the old landing pad, the flat metal surface beneath her boots cool in the morning light. She held a small holometer in her hand, the round device flickering with a pale blue glow. Every time she pressed the activation button, it showed a brief recording of her brother Marco, smiling as he waved goodbye before stepping onto the transport ship. That farewell felt like it happened yesterday, but the date on her console said it had been 6 months since he left for the outer colonies. She sighed and tucked a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. The wind carried the distant hum of engines and the smell of ozone from the generators. Alina closed her eyes, remembering how close she and Marco used to be. They built model rockets together in their backyard, racing each one until it fell apart. He taught her how to balance the fins just right, and she showed him how to paint the holes with bright stripes. Their laughter had been easy then, like sunlight on water. Now the laughter felt like a dream. Alina replayed the last message Marco sent her. His voice had sounded strained, and he spoke quickly over the static. "I'll message you when we land, promise." Then the signal had cut out. Weeks passed without word. She tried every communication channel she knew. Subspace mail, combeacons, even old-fashioned courier packets. Nothing reached him, and nothing came back. The quiet in her apartment grew heavy, like a storm gathering just out of sight. Each morning, Alina dragged herself to work at the colony's hydroponic farm. She tended to the plants under violet grow lights, checking nutrients and water levels. The greens and tubers thrived, but Alina did not. Her hands moved out of habit. But her mind stayed with Marco. She thought about the day he left, how he looked so tall in his uniform, chest puffed out, eyes bright with excitement. He believed he could help the outer colonies fix their failing ecosystems, using the techniques they learned on Earth. Alina had been proud of him, proud and terrified. She set aside her pruning tools and stepped outside for a break. The farm domes rose behind her like glass bubbles reflecting the sun. She pressed the holometer to her ear, hoping for a signal she knew would not come. The device crackled, then went silent. Tears pricked her eyes. She wiped them quickly, afraid someone would see. Even after 6 months, she did not know how to bridge the distance. The stars seemed cold and unreachable now. That evening, she visited the colony's community hall. The group had gathered to hear news of supply shipments and trade routes. There was cheering when the latest transport arrived ahead of schedule. Alina forced herself to clap, though her heart felt like stone. After the meeting, she lingered near the exit and asked the hall steward, "Any messages for family members?" He shook his head. On her way home, she met Dr. Yara, a kind woman who treated workers at the farm. "Alina," Yara said softly, "you look tired. Is everything all right?" Alina forced a smile. "Just missing someone," she said. Yara nodded, her brow furrowed with concern. "I know how hard it can be when someone you love is far away. But hold on. He chose to help others. That is brave." The words warmed Alina's chest, like a light in the darkness. Back in her apartment, Alina looked at the small framed photo on her desk. Her and Marco standing in front of their childhood. Home. She whispered, "I wish I knew how to reach you." Then she tapped her comlink again. At the last moment she paused. She could send just a text. But what if he was too busy? What if the signal failed again? Doubt filled her mind, and she powered off the link. That night, sleep slipped away from her. Instead, she sat by her window, staring at the stars. She thought of the stories Marco used to tell about first contact and human courage. He believed humanity could heal other worlds. Lena felt a spark of that same hope ignite inside her. She realized that if Marco could cross the void to help strangers, she could cross the void to find him. Early the next morning, she packed a small bag with essentials: food rations, water filters, a portable beacon, and the holometer. She chose a route to the transport docks and booked the next civilian shuttle heading to the outer rim. Her heart pounded with nervous excitement. She did not know what she would find, but she knew she could not wait any longer. As the shuttle lifted off, Alina pressed her hand against the cabin wall. The domes of the colony receded below, and the stars ahead shone like promises. She thought of Marco's quiet strength and imagined his surprised smile when he saw her message in person. The distance between them was vast, but it was not infinite. Humanity's silent courage lay in taking the first step, no matter how small. Alina took a deep breath and reached for the beacon. She activated its emergency channel. Her voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. "Marco, it's me, Alina. I'm coming to find you." The words floated across space, carried by humanity's hope and determination. In that moment, she felt the stillness break, replaced by a pulse of purpose. She was no longer waiting in sadness. She was moving forward, guided by the bond that distance could not destroy. Alina woke before dawn, the shuttle's engines humming beneath her. She pressed her palm to the tiny window and watched the stars blur into light. Her heart felt a mix of fear and hope. She clutched the holometer in one hand and the portable beacon in the other. She did not know where Marco was exactly, only that he served on a research station orbiting Kestrel 7. Still, she trusted humanity's relentless spirit, its drive to reach out, to connect no matter the distance. When the shuttle docked, Alina stood in the busy cargo bay, breathing in recycled air and distant chatter. Workers in green jumpsuits unloaded supplies while pilots plotted charts on glowing screens. She stepped forward and asked the supervisor where she might find transport to the research station. The supervisor frowned. "Civilian shuttles to Kestrel depart once a week. Next launch in 2 days." Alina's chest tightened. Waiting felt unbearable. She forced herself to smile. "I'll wait," she said, her voice steady like steel. In the shuttle's communal lounge, Alina found a narrow bunk and settled in with a thin blanket. She watched fellow passengers load crates and small animals for the station's biodomes. Among them was a trader from the Tauran who offered Alina dried fruit. She accepted and returned a polite nod. Even strangers shared small kindnesses out here. Alina thought of Marco teaching her to bake fruit tarts in their mother's kitchen. She closed her eyes and remembered the sweet smell. That memory gave her strength. During the 2-day wait, Alina explored the station's corridors. She visited the hydroponic bays, where tendrils of green climbed metal racks under soft lights. She touched the leaves gently, marveling at how humans had adapted Earth's crops to new worlds. On a nearby console, she left a short message. Alina was here, missing Marco. It stayed on the welcome screen until a technician erased it. She felt a pang of loss, but she also felt proud. Humanity persisted, even in silent messages. At night, Alina wandered to the observation deck. Through thick glass, she saw Kestrel VII's teal oceans and swirling clouds. The view was breathtaking, but it reminded her how far Marco had gone. The planet's beauty made her ache with longing. She pressed the beacon's activation button and spoke into the void. "Marco, it's Alina. I'm here too." No answer came. The silence pressed in, but Alina whispered back, "I'll wait for you." She believed that hope could travel faster than any signal. On the third morning, the shuttle boarded for Kestrel 7. Alina sat near the airlock, gripping her bag. When the engines roared, she felt every tremor in her bones. She closed her eyes and imagined flying rockets, the scent of burnt fuel and her brother's laughter. She felt his courage fill her chest. That courage made her smile, even under stress. It reminded her of humanity's best quality. When things grow hard, humans do not give up. They keep trying. The shuttle descended through clouds into Kestrel's atmosphere. The cabin windows fogged with mist as they passed through each layer. Alina pressed her forehead to the glass and watched green forests give way to silver plains. Finally, the ship landed on a platform beside a cylindrical research station. Uniformed officers guided passengers down a gangway. Alina stepped onto Kestrel's soil, foreign yet somehow welcoming. She took a deep breath of crisp air mixed with ozone and felt a spark of joy. Inside the station's main hall, Alina asked for the research department. Clerk handed her a data pad with names and quarters. She found Marco's unit deck 14. Lab C. Her fingers trembled as she checked the map. The corridors were calm, lights humming overhead. She walked forward, each step echoing her pounding heart. Sometimes she paused to steady herself. She whispered, "This is for us." Humanity's calm persistence guided her feet down that long hallway. At Lab C's door, Alina hesitated. She heard muffled voices and metal tools clinking. She told herself that she belonged here, that blood mattered more than any protocol. She tapped the door panel. "Permission to enter," she said softly. Inside, Marco crouched over a table of algae samples, his back to her, his shoulders tensed. Alina swallowed and stepped in. He looked up, eyes wide, as though seeing her for the first time in years. Her voice cracked. "Marco, it's me." He blinked, then stood, mouth open. For a long moment, they just stared, and Marco rushed forward and wrapped her in a hug that shook them both. Alina felt tears warm her cheeks. She closed her eyes and held him tight. In that embrace, distance dissolved. Humanities. Alina settled into the narrow bunk aboard the research station, her thoughts drifting back to Earth's blue skies. Even after their reunion, she still felt a hollow spot in her chest. Marco's work kept him busy most days, and the long hours in the lab meant they spoke rarely beyond quick updates. She pressed her hand to the wall and wondered how to bridge the distance that still lingered between them. The next morning, Lena rose with the station's crew. She slipped into the dining hall and found Marco at a small table, hunched over data pads. He looked up and gave her a bright smile, but still his eyes returned to the glowing screens. She poured 2 cups of steaming tea and set one before him. "I thought you might like this," she said softly. Marco paused his typing and lifted the cup, inhaling the scent. "Thank you," he replied. But then he tapped the pad and murmured, "I need to finish these readings." Lena nodded, lifted her cup, and sat quietly. Hours passed as Alina wandered the station's corridors. The hum of machinery was constant, a reminder that science never slept. She paused at the hydroponic bay, where plants swayed under artificial lights. Remembering how they grew gardens together at home, she carefully pruned a struggling fern. Her fingers moved with care, and she whispered encouragement to the tiny leaves. The fern seemed to perk up slightly, and Elena's heart felt a small glow. If humans could coax life from seeds on a new world, she thought, then she could coax warmth back into her relationship. That evening, Lena joined a small gathering of station residents in the recreation lounge. She carried a stack of old family photos, earths, landscapes, birthday parties, and holiday trips. When the group settled on soft benches around the holoprojector, she loaded the images one by one. The screen lit up with green forests, white waterfalls, and golden deserts. She shared stories, how they picnicked by a lake at sunset, how Marco once rescued a stranded kitten. Laughter rippled through the lounge, and even the stern chief engineer cracked a smile. Lena felt human connection bloom in that room. After the show, Marco found her by the exit. His expression was gentle as he reached for her hand. "I didn't." "No, you had so many pictures," he said. Alina shrugged. "I saved them for a moment like this." He led her to a quiet balcony overlooking the station's docking bay. Ships rested in silence, their metal hulls gleaming under floodlights. Marco turned to her and said, "I'm sorry I've been distant. My work. It matters a lot, but you matter more." Elena's throat tightened. She had hoped to hear those words. They spent the night talking under the soft glow of corridor lights. Marco described his research, how algae strains on Kestrel 7 could clean polluted water on Earth. Alina listened, amazed by his passion. Then she shared her own dreams, to help the station grow Earth crops and to send fresh food back to struggling colonies. Their voices grew steadier as they found common ground again. By the time they returned to their bunks, the space between them felt smaller. The next morning, Alina woke to the sound of alarms. She dashed to the lab and found Marco at the central console. A sensor reading flashed red. A vital experiment was failing. Marco's face blanched. "If this culture dies, we lose weeks of work," he whispered. Alina stepped forward. "Show me what to do." He guided her through the steps, adjusting nutrient levels, tweaking light cycles, and recalibrating pumps. Elena's hands moved confidently, drawing on what she had learned tending farms back home. Together, they revived the fragile algae in a tense half-hour. When the experiment stabilized, Marco pulled Alina into a trembling hug. "We did it," he said, relief flooding his voice. Alina smiled through tears. "Together," she whispered. In that moment, she felt the true power of their bond. When humans face challenges, they do not stand alone. They join hands and lift each other up. Over the next days, Alina and Marco crafted a new routine. Each morning they shared tea before. No screens, no data pads, just 2 mugs and quiet conversation. During the day, they worked side by side. He in the lab, she in the garden modules where earth crops grew and soil trays. They traded tips and cheered each small success. In the evenings, they held story sessions for the crew, sharing human tales of courage and hope. The station felt warmer, more alive. One afternoon, Alina received a packet from Earth. It contained messages from friends and family celebrating their return. Marco watched her read the words aloud. She laughed and wiped her eyes. "They miss you," she said. Marco nodded slowly. "I miss them too." For the first time since he arrived, he sounded homesick. Alina closed the packet and slipped her arm through his. "We'll send messages, and soon you'll visit home again," she promised. As the shuttle bell rang to signal a supply delivery, Alina and Marco stood side by side at the docking bay. Ships arrived and unloaded crates of food, medicine, and mail. They watched the activity together, hands clasped. Alina leaned her head on his shoulder. "We found each other again," she said. Marco kissed her forehead. "We'll keep finding each other," replied. Alina looked at the stars beyond the open bay doors and felt a swell of pride. Humanity's strength lay in its ability to endure distance, to reach across voids with courage and compassion. She knew that no matter how far people traveled, their hearts could stay close. And as long as they held hope, no star was too distant to bridge. Alina woke to the soft hum of the station's life support. Marco was already gone, swept into his lab before sunrise. She pressed her hand to the cool wall, feeling the emptiness settle around her. The morning tea they shared each day now tasted faint without his warm presence beside her. She wrapped her arms around herself and closed her eyes, remembering the ways she and Marco used to laugh over forgotten mugs and half-spilled sugar. The distance felt wide once again, even though they slept under the same roof of metal and glass. She carried her tasks through the day with steady hands, tending rows of lettuce and potatoes in the hydroponic bays. Each leaf glowed green under the artificial lights, and Alina felt pride in coaxing life from water and nutrients alone. Yet every time she reached out to prune a malformed stem, her mind drifted to Marco's solitary figure at the lab door. She longed to share her small victories, to see his eyes light up at a new sprout. But he was always busy data screens, endless calculations, late meetings with the research council. That evening, Alina walked to the observation deck. The vast expanse of Kestrel VII's sky stretched before her, pastel clouds swirling with orange sunlight. She pressed her palm to the glass and whispered into the void, "I miss you." No answer came, only the steady pulse of the station's lights. Her heart ached. She wanted to ask him for help, to find a way back to closeness. But every time she tried to draft a message on her pad, the words froze. What could she say that hadn't already been said? How could she bridge a gap she could not measure? In the rec room, she found the crew gathered around a small table, passing around a battered deck of cards. Lena had once watched Marco teach. Earth games, here dice, dominoes, old puzzles passed down through families. Tonight she joined them, but felt awkward as laughter echoed around. She forced a smile when someone dealt her cards. The clatter of chips and friendly teasing felt kind, but Alina felt like an outsider looking in. She folded her hand quickly and slipped out into the corridor. Under the soft glow of emergency lights, Alina spotted Dr. Yara walking toward the hydroponics bay. Yara's gentle face looked tired, but she smiled when she saw Alina. "You look restless," she said. Alina sighed. "I feel so far from Marco again. We share the same space, but I can't reach him." Yara nodded. "Sometimes people drift even when they stand side by side, but humans are daring. We build bridges across chasms of silence. You just need a new path, Alina frowned. What if I choose the wrong words? Yara placed a hand on her shoulder. And try another path. Speak in the language of the heart, maybe a small gift, a shared memory. Show him you care in action, not just words. That night, Alina rummaged through her pack and found the last packet of Earth Garden Soil Special Mix she had saved for months. She slipped into the hydroponic bay and set aside one growth vat. Carefully, she sprinkled the soil at the base of a young pepper plant. Then she adjusted the water flow to encourage rooting in the new medium. The plant's leaves quivered. Under the extra nutrient boost, Alina whispered, "This is for us." She placed a tiny tag beside the plant. Marco and Elena's hope. Her heart fluttered. It was small, but it was something she could offer. Early next morning, she found Marco hovering by the lab entrance, data pad in hand. She waited until he looked up. "I made something," she said, guiding him to the hydroponic bay. His eyes narrowed with curiosity. When he saw the tagged plant and the dark soil mix, he traced the words on the plastic marker. Alina watched his face soften. He knelt beside the vat, gently touching the leaves. "You used the earth's soil," he said, voice thick. "I thought it might help this strain." She nodded. "I wanted to share something with you, something we did together back home." Marco stood and held her hand. "It's perfect," he said. "Thank you." Over the next hours, they worked side by side. Alina adjusting soil pH, Marco calibrating sensors to track growth. They moved in a quiet rhythm, fingers brushing as they passed tools. Elation warmed Elena's chest. She realized that actions, small acts of care, could speak louder than hurried messages. They had built anew. Alina woke to the soft whir of the station's environmental controls. Sunlight filtered through the observation dome, painting streaks of gold across the floor. Today felt different. Marco had been invited to present his research at the station's science gala, and she could see excitement in his eyes. But beneath that excitement, Alina sensed a familiar shadow of doubt. The gala meant long hours of preparation, rehearsals, and formal dinner's time when she would be alone again. She hovered in the doorway of his lab as he arranged
sample vials on a glass shelf.
His brow was furrowed, and every now and then he tapped his data pad, muttering to himself. Lena stepped forward, heart pounding. "Can I help?" she asked softly. Marco looked up, surprised. He set down the pad. "I need to prepare my presentation slides," he said, "but it's tedious work." Alina smiled. "I'm good at design," she said. "Let me make them look sharp." His eyes softened. "I love that." In that moment, she felt the first spark of hope since the banquet announcement. Together, they gathered images of algae cultures, growth charts, and Kestrel 7 landscapes. Alina arranged each picture on the slide canvas, choosing clear fonts. In simple layouts, Marco offered corrections, pointing out key data points. Their collaboration felt natural, like tuning a finely crafted instrument. As they worked side by side, Alina felt the distance between them shrink. Humanity's spirit of cooperation, shared work, and shared purpose bound them together once more. That night, Alina practiced her own part. She was asked to speak briefly about Earth's farming heritage before Marco's talk. Public speaking was not her strength, but she believed in their shared story. She wrote down a few lines. How her family garden taught her patience. How Earth crops sustained billions, and how those lessons now fed distant colonies. She rehearsed in front of the bay of lettuce and potato plants, imagining Marco's proud smile. Even her voice trembled. She felt an ember of courage glowing inside her. On the evening of the gala, station's grand hall gleamed with polished metal and soft lantern lights. Delegates from many worlds filled circular tables. Holographic banners displayed science logos from across the galaxy. Alina pinched the hem of her simple dress and glanced toward the stage entrance. Marco caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up. His uniform was immaculate, his posture proud. Yet he seemed to hesitate. Alina moved to his side and slipped her hand into his. He exhaled and nodded. Together, they stepped onto the stage. Alina spoke first, her voice clear and steady. She told, The audience about Earth's long journey from small backyard gardens to high-tech hydroponics domes. She spoke of shared meals around a wooden table, of hands stained green from tending seedlings, and of hope that grows from soil and spirit. When she finished, she looked out at the crowd, and their warm applause felt like a rain of light on her heart. She turned to Marco, who smiled more genuinely than she had seen in weeks. Then it was Marco's turn. He presented data on algae strains that could purify water on Kestrel 7 and beyond. He spoke passionately of experiments they had done together, how Alina coaxed the plants to thrive in mixed soil, how their combined efforts saved a struggling culture. As he spoke, he often glanced at Alina, gratitude shining in his eyes. The audience leaned forward, captivated by his words and by the bond that powered his science. After the gala, the hall emptied into a balcony overlooking the station's gardens. Marco took Elena's hand and led her to the edge. Below, rows of glowing plants swayed under violet lights. He turned to her and said, "I couldn't have done this without you. You remind me why I came here to help others and to stay connected to home." Elena's eyes glistened. "And you remind me that distance is just a measure, not a barrier," she replied. They embraced under the twin moons rising in the dark sky. In the days that followed, Alina and Marco settled into a new rhythm. They still worked their respective jobs, she in the hydroponic bays, he in the lab, but they began and ended each day with a shared ritual. At dawn, they met at the observation deck, exchanged a warm greeting, and watched the sun rise over Kestrel, the seventh oceans. At dusk, they sat together in the garden lounge, sipping tea and talking about small joys. A new lettuce sprout, a funny lab mishap, or a remembered Earth sunrise. Their conversations were gentle bridges, each one carrying them closer. One afternoon, Alina received a message from Earth, an invitation for both of them to join a virtual summit on sustainable colony farming. Marco read it over her shoulder. His face lit up. "We can share our work with home," he said. Alina felt her heart swell. A new chapter was beginning, one where their bond, strengthened by distance and effort, would carry hope across the stars. She reached for Marco's hand and squeezed it. Humanity's quiet courage, the will to stand firm through silence, to act with love, and to share hope had led them here. And together they would continue to bridge every distance, shining their strength into every corner of the galaxy. Alina woke before the station's lights fully turned on. She padded down the corridor toward the hydroponic bay, but her steps felt heavy. Even after weeks of rebuilding their bond, she sometimes caught herself missing Marco's face before the sun rose. Lately, his lab work demanded long hours, and their shared moments had slipped back into quick greetings and tired smiles. Alina filled her watering can and set to work, but each drop of nutrient solution felt like a silent question. How can she bring them closer again? She paused by a row of young tomato plants and gently brushed her fingers over a glossy leaf. An idea bloomed in her mind. Something small, something human. She carefully collected a handful of seed packets from Earth varieties she had brought, along cherry tomatoes, sweet carrots, and blue corn. Each packet held a memory of home. Alina tucked them into a woven pouch and slipped it into her pocket. Maybe a gift could speak louder than words. Later, she found Marco in the lab, illuminated by pale monitor light. He looked up, surprised by the rustle of her steps. "I have something for you," Alina said, holding out the pouch. Marco peered at the plain sachet and gently opened it. His eyes widened when he saw the seed packets. He traced each label. With a fingertip, "Earth Seeds," he whispered. Alina nodded. "I thought we could grow them together here." Little garden in the station's lounge. Marco closed the pouch and stood. "I'd like that," he said, voice soft. They chose a spot near the observation deck, under a skylight that let in starlight each night. Together, they built shallow beds, lined with earth soil and station gel to hold water. Alina planted the seeds in neat rows, while Marco mixed nutrient solutions to keep them strong. Their hands brushed as they worked, sending small sparks of warmth through Elena's chest. She realized that building something side by side could heal the quiet spaces between their hearts. For days, they tended the garden. Alina measured water each morning, and Marco adjusted light cycles at dusk. The first tiny sprouts broke through the soil like hopeful flags against an alien world. Alina cheered softly, and Marco clapped. They began to share more than chores. Over steaming tea in the station lounge, they talked about childhood memories of family dinners. Of the first time they tasted fresh tomatoes. Laughter returned to their voices, light and easy. Then disaster struck. A sudden power surge sent sensors into chaos. The lights flickered, and the water pump stalled. Lena raced to the garden, heart pounding. She found the sprouts wilting, their leaves curling. Marco joined her moments later, fingers flying over console buttons. They worked in tandem. She reset the pumps while he rerouted power to the bio bays. When the hum of machinery returned, they flooded the beds with care and watched as the plants drank deeply. The crisis showed them their strength when humans face trouble. They do not stand alone. That evening, they sat before the recovering garden, side by side on a bench. The sprouts stood taller, but still lean, reaching for the lights. Alina reached for Marco's hand. Thank you for helping me save this, she said. Marco turned to her with a gentle smile. Thank you for reminding me why I came here, he replied. They leaned into each other, feeling the bond deepen. In the soft glow of the garden lights, the young plants, and their renewed connection, both felt fragile and full of possibility. Over the next week, the garden flourished. Bright green leaves unfurled, and tiny red and orange fruits began to appear. Lena and Marco invited the station crew to harvest the first ripe tomatoes and carrots. Guests tasted the sweet vegetables. They applauded the siblings' work. Alina watched Marco's proud grin and felt a surge of hope. Humanity's spirit, its drive to create, to share, and to rebuild, shone in every smiling face around her. One clear night, Alina and Marco stood under the observation dome, stars above mirrored by the glow of their thriving garden. Marco draped an arm around her shoulders. We found our way, he said, voice warm. Alina rested her head on his shoulder. And we will keep finding each other, she whispered. The gentle sway of leaves in the planter below seemed to nod in agreement. No matter how far apart people drift, she knew that hope, action, and quiet courage could always bring hearts back together. Alina stirred awake to the deep rumble of the station's hull. Through the observation dome, she saw streaks of gray clouds racing across Kestrel, the seventh sky. A meteor storm had formed unexpectedly. She shivered, not from cold, but from worry. If the station's communications array failed, she and Marco would be cut off from everyone again. The memory of their long silence 6 months ago pressed on her heart. She hurried to the hydroponic bay, where Marco was already crouched beside. A tangle of cables. His datapad glowed red with error alerts. When she saw his drawn face, Alina felt a sudden panic twist in her chest. Comms are down, Marco said quietly. The storm damaged the uplink dishes, no signals in or out. Lena's throat tightened, but she forced calm into her voice. Let's fix them, she said. She handed him a toolkit. Together, they climbed to the rooftop platform where the dishes stood like silent sentinels under the storm-lit sky. The wind rattled their suits as shards of charged dust whipped past. Marco pointed out a snapped support strut and bent connectors. Need to reroute power from the secondary grid and patch the strut, he said. Alina nodded and knelt beside him, her training in station repairs kicking in. She handed him spare cables and steadied the metal brace as he tightened bolts against the howling wind. With each turn of his wrench, Alina felt the distance between them shrink. They moved as one, teamed as hands, steadying the strut, her fingers guiding the wires. Lightning flashed beyond the dome, and for a moment the world gleamed in silver. Alina pressed her shoulder against Marco's back, offering support when a gust nearly knocked him off balance. He raised an eyebrow and she grinned, bracing herself so he could finish the connection. When the circuit hummed back to life, they shared a quick, triumphant glance. Inside the comms bunker, they crouched over the control panel. Red lights still flickered, but the main power bar had jumped to green. All right, Marco said, voice hopeful, entered a series of commands. The console word and the uplink status began to climb from 0 to 15%. The display counted upward, 30, 50, 70. Alina bit her lip, watching. The numbers rise like her racing heart. When it hit 100, a clear chime rang out across the station. Communications were restored. Back in the observation lounge, Alina tapped her compad. A backlog of unread messages flooded in, 1 from her mother, 3 from old friends on Earth, several from colleagues asking after the station's welfare. Marco's face lit up as he read a message from their father. "Be safe. We're proud of you both." Alina felt tears sting her eyes. She handed the pad to Marco, and they read the messages together in grateful silence. Humanity's power to reach across space had triumphed again. Yes. Later, as the storm clouds drifted away, Alina and Marco walked side by side through the garden. Modules. The special earth seed plants glowed under violet lights, their leaves a bright promise. Alina touched a ripe cherry tomato and held it to Marco's lips. He laughed and took a bite, sweet juice spilling at the corners of his mouth. She laughed too, relief washing through her. The crisis had reminded them of their shared strength and the bond that distance could never break. That evening, Alina invited the station crew to a small celebration in the garden lounge. She set out fresh produce and poured steaming cups of herbal tea. Marco stood beside her as she raised her cup. "To humanity," she called softly, "and to the courage that unites us." The crew echoed her toast, glasses clinking in the warm light. There, among friends from many worlds, Fiona the engineer, Jox the pilot, and even the stoic chief scientist joined in. Alina's heart swelled. This was human kindness at its best. After the gathering, Marco led Alina back to the observation deck. The twin moons of Kestrel 7 shone clear above them in a starlit sky. He reached for her hand. "When I saw you out there in the storm, I felt I could face anything," he said. Alina smiled, brushing a loose curl from her face. "And I felt that as long as you were with me, no distance or storm could ever keep us apart." He drew her close, and they stood watching the moons, hearts entwined. Before sleep, Alina sent a brief message home. "We're safe. We'll write more tomorrow." She tapped send, then looked at Marco. He gave her a sleepy nod. She reached out and held his hand as they settled into their bunks. In the quiet darkness, the station's life support hummed steadily like a heartbeat. Lena closed her eyes, comforted by the thought that their connection was as strong as the signal they had restored. No matter how far someone traveled, humans never lost the courage to reach out, to rebuild, and to hope. Alina woke to the gentle glow of the station's lights, the main corridor humming with early activity. Today was different. Today marked 1 year since Marco had left Earth for Kestrel 7. Alina stood by the observation dome and pressed her hand to the glass. She remembered the loneliness she had felt before she decided to follow him. Now, as she watched the planet's pale clouds drift by, she felt a quiet pride in how far they had come together. She made her way to the hydroponic bay, where rows of plants thrived under violet lamps. Marco was already there, crouched beside the earth seed garden they had built together. Tiny tomatoes, carrots, and blue corn swayed gently in the mist. When he saw Alina, he straightened and offered her a bright smile. His eyes were warm, and in that moment, Alina felt the distance between them dissolve completely. "Happy anniversary," Marco said softly, held out a small data pad. Alina took it, curious. The screen showed a message from their family back on Earth, a short video of their parents standing in their childhood garden, waving and blowing kisses. Alina felt tears of joy well in her eyes. She turned to Marco. "They miss you." She said, "They love you." Marco nodded, voice thick. "I miss them, and I love you both." Alina slipped her arm through his and guided him to the bench they had placed by the dome. Outside, the twin moons of Kestrel 7 shone like distant lanterns.
Marco
played the video on the pad. They watched their parents clip basil in water. Young seedlings under a bright sun. Simple joy on Earth touched their hearts. When the video ended, they pressed send to record a reply. Alina spoke first, telling their parents about the garden's harvest. Marco added how the algae project was saving billions of liters of water. Then together, they blew a kiss into the pad's lens. After they sent the reply, Alina stood and took Marco's hand. "Let's plant one more thing today," she said. She led him back into the bay, where a single empty spot waited in their garden bed. From her pocket, she drew a small capsule, the last earth seed she had saved, a sunflower seed from her childhood home. Marco's eyes lit with wonder. "Sunflower?" he asked. Alina nodded, to remind us of home's bright light. Together they pressed the seed into the soil and covered it with gentle care. Over the next hours, they tended the bay side by side. Alina adjusted watering intervals while Marco fine-tuned the light spectrum to encourage the sunflower's growth. They worked in harmony, exchanging stories and laughter. The simple act of planting together reminded them that distance could be measured only in miles, not in love or commitment. That evening, the station's crew gathered in the garden lounge. For a small celebration, Alina and Marco stood before their green friend's lettuce, potatoes, tomatoes, and now a hopeful sunflower bud. Alina raised her cup of herbal tea. "To new beginnings," she said. Marco raised his glass of algae broth. "To home, wherever we are," he added. The crew echoed their toast, voices warm and full of respect. In that moment, Alina felt the full power of humanity's unity. No matter how far people traveled, they carried home in their hearts. Later, Alina and Marco returned to the observation deck. The sunflower seedling stood in a small pot beside them, its green sprout reaching upward. Alina smiled at the tender shoot. "It will bloom soon," she said. Marco wrapped an arm around her. "And when it does, we'll send you back to Earth to see your old garden," he teased gently. Alina laughed. "Only if you promise to come with me." He kissed her cheek. "I promise." They sat in quiet peace, watching the moons drift through the star-scattered sky. Alina pressed her head against Marco's shoulder. "I used to be afraid of losing you," she admitted. Marco kissed the top of her head. "And I was afraid of being alone out here," he replied. "But we found our way back." Alina closed her eyes. "Because we did not stay silent," she said. "Ain't reached out, we helped, and we listened." Marco nodded. "That is the best of us," he agreed. Before sleep, Alina sent one more message home. A single photo of the sunflower seedling under the dome. She captioned it, "Hope grows still." "We're gonna read still." When the message went through, she slipped into bed beside Marco. In the soft glow of station lights, they held hands until sleep found them both. Alina dreamed of Earth sunflowers swaying in a summer breeze, but with Marco beside her, she knew that no matter where humanity went, hope would guide. Their path had nothing could keep hearts apart when they chose to stand together.